Sure.
Okay.
Ready?
Okay, perfect. I think we can start now. We are live. So, hello everyone. Sorry for small delay, but I think it was a good time for you to grab some hot coffee, water, and sit with us for 1 hour to listen to our great speakers. So, welcome on Global Bay community with our part of Pay Excellence Conference. So we will have two speakers today, as I mentioned before, and our main topic is product renaissance, evolving excellence, and driving innovations. So I don't want to make any delays anymore. So our first speaker, Barry Cranston, EPAM Director, Product Manager. Barry, stage is yours fully.
Thank you very much, Darina. So welcome to my talk on harnessing abductive reasoning to drive product-centric thinking. Let's introduce our friend, the Quokka, here shortly. For some reason, this presentation has become rather Quokka-oriented. I had way too much fun with DALL-E image generation. I'm not sure why. Anyway, I'd love to hear your feedback once we're done. So at the bottom, and on every one of the slides that I have, there's a Menti code. So go to the Menti, add your feedback there. I'd love to hear from you. So I'm Barry, Director of Product Management based in London, and I have the honour of leading the product management team in the UK and Ireland as part of the broader EMEA and worldwide product management community. This topic of abductive reasoning really matters to me because throughout my career, I've learned painfully at times that generating insights, coming up with ideas, identifying solutions to customer pain points, and innovating is always done with limited time and limited information. So innovation is hard, and it helps to develop the right mindset with the right tools and combine those in a structured approach. So as product managers, we're naturally, like our Quokkas here, looking to the future. Product-centric thinking requires us, amongst other things, to continuously innovate and constantly seek ways to improve the products that we have, keeping our focus on our users. And when we see innovators at work, it can look like they get flashes of insight out of nowhere, creative genius. But I think what's really happening is that they're exercising a different kind of reasoning that handles the uncertainty implicit in innovation. So creating the future requires innovation, and I think that uncertainty is a prerequisite for that. What do I mean? Well, if you think about the different kinds of work that we do, for example, when we are optimizing existing products in existing markets, we can be fairly sure of success because we're working on known products for known customers using an existing business model. You can still go wrong, of course, but if you're doing your homework, the risk is lower. On the other hand, if you are taking existing products to new markets, all of a sudden we're operating with a new dimension of uncertainty and we need to manage the desirability risk. Next, if we're taking new products to existing markets, another dimension of uncertainty opens up and we need to manage feasibility and desirability risk. And then finally, the boss level innovation challenge is creating new products for new markets. Now, everything in the business model changes and you have uncertainty everywhere. So the critical thing here is that there is uncertainty pretty much regardless of what you're doing at different levels. There are existing frameworks that lay out a model for thinking about uncertainty and innovation over time at a portfolio or an organizational level, like McKinsey's 3 Horizons or the Ansoff or Ambition matrices. But this is not about that. What I'm really interested in is the thinking tools that we can use to innovate in the face of uncertainty, whilst maintaining that rigorous decision making. And so this leads us to abductive reasoning. So product-centric thinking requires us to innovate in the face of uncertainty. We need the tools to do that, and abductive reasoning is one of those tools. A little background then. I think it makes sense to understand what abductive reasoning actually is before we go to use it. And I think it makes the most sense when contrasted with a couple of other forms of reasoning that are more typically used, more typically taught at school, deductive and inductive reasoning. So let's explore some examples. Deductive reasoning first, more quokkas. With deductive reasoning, we start with a general statement and logically derive a specific conclusion. Remember, what we're doing here is contrasting these things with abductive reasoning. So we start with a general statement, logically derive a specific conclusion. Let's look at our example here. We take a premise, herbivores eat plants. We take another premise, all quokkas are herbivores. So we can draw a conclusion, quokkas eat plants. The conclusion is an extension of the premise, but critically, it isn't offering any kind of new thinking. It's seeking truth. So if the premises are true and the reasoning is sound, then the conclusion must be true. Next, inductive reasoning. And again, we'll stick with our quokkas. Inductive reasoning involves making a bunch of observations and then seeking a broader generalization. The more observations you have, the more confident you are in the truth of the generalization. So in this case, we've got a bunch of quokkas. One was seen eating the leaves of a eucalyptus tree, the other was eating the leaves of a shrub. We make a bunch of these observations, we can draw a generalization. Quokkas like leaves. Again, there's no new thinking here. Deductive and inductive reasoning are seeking logical truth, but the goal of abductive reasoning is not truth, but rather, at least when we put it to our purposes, its goal is workable value creation. So abductive reasoning then is starting with an observation and then seeking the most likely explanation. So let's take this example. A particular quokka, a very snappily dressed friend here, is not eating leaves, but he's eating berries. So we start to think about the best explanation for that. We've made one observation, it's an insight. This quokka, this is our explanation, might eat berries when there is a scarcity of its regular food. So from there, we can then build a hypothesis. This is where the real power of abductive reasoning comes in. Our hypothesis in this case might be, well, quokkas switch to eating berries when their preferred food is scarce. So this conclusion that we've drawn is plausible, but needs investigation, and we've created a hypothesis that can be tested. So in the context of product management, these reasoning styles are employed to understand consumer behavior, predict market trends, develop product strategies. Deductive reasoning helps in applying general principles to specific products. Inductive reasoning is useful for deriving insights from customer data and for feedback when you have lots of observations. But abductive reasoning is working really well for hypothesizing new features, new opportunities based on anomalies or trends that you notice. It takes your, oh, that's weird, that moment that you have, and then gives you a way to turn those into testable hypotheses. So, one more example, again with quokkas, and this is going to be a little less salad-oriented and a little more product management-oriented. Imagine we're a product manager at an edutech. We're creating a wildlife-themed, of course, educational app. Our goal is to build a delightful feature that drives user engagement. So let's look again at the different modes of reasoning. Deductive reasoning first. We can start with a couple of premises. Marsupials are popular subjects in wildlife education. Premise 2, all quokkas are marsupials. A real conclusion, we can build an educational app about quokkas and expect it to be popular. The reasoning's straightforward, it's based on general principles. The conclusion is a logical extension of the premises, but it's not really offering anything all that innovative. It's a cute idea, but it's not that innovative. Next, inductive reasoning. This time again, we make observations. So we might start with users of our wildlife apps engage more with interactive features like games and quizzes. And then we can observe that educational apps with interactive elements tend to have higher user engagement. So the obvious conclusion is that our clock app should include interactive elements like games and quizzes to ensure that high user engagement. So the inductive reasoning is looking at specific instances, extrapolating to a general conclusion. It's data-driven, but it's relying on existing patterns and existing data. So is it innovative? Finally, how can we bring abductive reasoning to bear? Well, it starts with an observation. In this case, we make an interesting observation while we're observing our market. We notice a spike in social media interest around quokkas because of how delightful they look. They're happy little smiles. And what people are doing is sharing and resharing photos of these smiling quokkas. So we start to think, what's the best explanation for this? Well, people are attracted to the quokka's unique and friendly experience. Now, that may be true or maybe not, but the beauty of this is it drives us towards a hypothesis to test it. And it helps us come up with an innovative idea. So what we're going to do is develop a feature in our app that lets users create and share their own little quokka characters with customizable expressions. And we're going to tap into this trend for sharing happy animal content, which is going to drive up user engagement. So we're starting with an observation, seeking the simplest and most likely explanation. And in this case, it's led to an idea that's not directly derived from existing data or any kind of general principles. So this is showing how abductive reasoning can lead to fresh and unexpected ideas by linking these observations to trends, to user interests, to the insight that you generate. And crucially, and I think this is a really key point, it's encouraging thinking outside of conventional patterns and allowing anybody that's building features to develop new features, novel features that resonate with users. And we'll look at why. So we've got a good understanding now and some examples of abductive reasoning. I want to look at how it and product-centric thinking are related. Now, product-centric thinking, of course, is about creating products that deliver the maximum value to customers whilst aligning to your business goals. How does abductive reasoning help? Bearing in mind what it is. So firstly, user centricity. Abductive reasoning orients you around observing and thinking deeply about the user, what they think, what they do, why they do it. Is prioritizing your focus on developing a deep empathy for your users, and it's a crucial part of design thinking. So abductive reasoning, because of its nature, based in observation and insight, brings you to user centricity. Secondly, ideation and innovation. Abductive reasoning is encouraging you to think beyond the obvious, to identify the real pain point, the root cause, even when the direct evidence isn't clear. And you can execute that through experimentation and through rapid prototyping. Again, because the output of abductive reasoning is a hypothesis, which you don't know is true or not, it's driving you to test and validate that hypothesis as quickly and simply as possible. And then you build confidence as you go and iteratively refine the user experience. So this kind of thinking is keeping us humble in the face of all that mountain of data and information that we're endlessly bombarded with, knowing that our ideas based on these insights are just hypotheses and they need to be tested. And then finally, dealing with ambiguity. We always have, in any kind of innovation or decision-making, incomplete information. Abductive reasoning gives us a rigorous way to move forwards. So there are other ways that abductive reasoning and product-centric thinking are related. Maybe you can think of a bunch more. Let's talk about actually putting this into practice. We'll talk about mental models. We'll talk about mindset and techniques that you bring to bear to build this abductive reasoning muscle in a second, but it's important to understand that innovative ideas don't arrive in a vacuum. They are shaped by internal and external factors. When you're making observations and developing ideas, you're always starting with some form of search frame, the guardrails within which you're operating that help you understand where it's useful for you to innovate. What is the problem space? Now, these are typically, at least within organizations, formed by the organizational vision and the goals that you're working towards. A good vision is directing you towards a goal, is guiding your innovation, and is a really crucial starting point. The universe of ideas is essentially infinite. And without a goal in mind, your hypothesis might be fascinating, but it's less likely to have the kind of impact that you want. So clear vision, clear business objectives are always the starting point. They create the problem space. Secondly, and kind of obviously, you're constrained by your own prior knowledge and experience. Actually, I think in two directions. Too little experience, and you might not be able to extrapolate from the observations that you make to get to a meaningful insight. Too much experience, and you might bring in confirmation bias, where you're inadvertently only developing insights that confirm what you already know. Now, the remedy for this is diversity combined with mindset, as we'll look at. Bringing multiple viewpoints together helps overcome these problems. So this is the problem space within which you're innovating and within which abductive reasoning takes place. The next part of the model is where the bulk of the creativity lives. And I want to look at practical steps for encouraging and enabling that. But in simple terms, it's easy to state. You make an observation. You notice something when spending time with your customers or your data. You have an, oh, that's interesting moment, which becomes an insight. You need to be, in practical terms, really diligent in recording each of these as you make them. What was the observation? When was it made? What insight did it lead to? You then work to brainstorm the most likely explanation for that observation. Bring other people in, and again, be diligent about recording these explanations. And then finally, you work that up into a hypothesis that you can test. Building and testing a good hypothesis, of course, is a skill in itself and not in our scope right now. Maybe a talk for another time. Okay, so incorporating abductive reasoning into our thinking and building the skill to do so involves both a shift in mindset and in really concrete practical steps. And that's what I want to talk about next. So let's look through a practical list. First of all, cultivate curiosity and open-mindedness. You have to embrace uncertainty and accept that not all the decisions that you make will be made with complete information. You need to be comfortable making educated guesses, and abductive reasoning is specifically geared towards this. You need to stay curious, build that curiosity, ask questions about why things are the way they are and what could be if they were different, and then challenge your own assumptions. Regularly question your existing beliefs and the assumptions that you have about your product and the market that you're in and your users. This will help you cultivate curiosity. And then develop those observational skills. Pay close attention to user behavior. Everything from user feedback and usage data, and even things like nonverbal cues in customer interviews. This is why it's so important to be really fluent in data analytics tools. Get to know the data. It's crucial. Keep a close eye as well, not just on your users, but on the broader and on adjacent markets and trends in technology. Insights can come from anywhere outside of your immediate product domain. And then in real terms, practice hypothesis generation. There we are. Practice hypothesis generation. Do scenario planning. Do what-if exercises. What if a new competitor enters the market? What if a new, as is happening a lot these days, a new technology disrupts current user behavior? And then brainstorm. Work with the team. Encourage wild ideas. Work backwards to find plausible ideas, and then build hypotheses. Being able to do rapid prototyping and testing is absolutely crucial, of course, you know this. Do quick and dirty prototypes of plausible ideas that you generate through abductive reasoning. And these can go from super simple sketches on pieces of paper Then you increase the fidelity as you go. This plugs into design thinking. And then bring these to real users, get the feedback, iterate. Remember, what you're doing here is validating or refuting your abductive hypothesis. And then finally, foster diversity, foster cross-functional collaboration, getting diverse perspectives and collaborating with people from different teams and people that think differently from you helps overcome those experience gaps and uncover better ideas. So our model is coming together now, but I want to talk about one last thing, evaluating your hypothesis. Being able to produce lots of hypotheses at speed is a strong predictor of success, but it's really important, even before you start to validate your hypothesis with experiments, to have some way to judge whether it's worth pursuing, to make sure you're putting your time in the right place. You need to stay passionate but impartial. You're passionate about the value that your hypothesis might generate, but you're impartial about whether it's objectively a good idea or not. You need to be prepared to discard ideas and move on if they don't make the grade. So firstly, relevance then. But remember, this is before you do any actual testing or validation of your hypothesis. You're thinking through whether it's worth pursuing. So relevance. How well does the hypothesis connect to the problem frame that I was talking about earlier? What we're really asking is, how closely does the solution that the hypothesis implies align to the vision, to the strategy, to the objectives? If the hypothesis is true, is there close alignment? Is it moving you towards your vision? Is it helping you achieve your objectives? Secondly, and decidedly more tricky, plausibility. Your conclusion, your abductive reasoning conclusion should offer a plausible explanation for whatever this unexpected insight or observation that you've made is. Noting, I think it's worth saying, by the way, that just because it's plausible doesn't mean it's true or right. That's what your testing is validating. It's worth noting that plausibility is time and context dependent, but honestly, when you're thinking about plausibility, if you have to invent new branches of science or deal with costly or untested technologies or resort to its aliens, then it's probably, your plausibility criteria is probably low enough for you to discard one idea in favor of pursuing another. And then when you've decided which hypotheses to pursue, you move them into a testing phase. So here's the model that we've worked through for making abductive reasoning a reality in your practice, particularly of product management, but any kind of day-to-day innovation. Identify the problem space. You're taking vision as the starting point. Generate insights through abductive reasoning, observation to build hypotheses, and then evaluate those to ensure that they're relevant and plausible, and then move into the normal practice of testing and validating potential solutions for all the normal things: technical and operational viability, usability, feasibility, and any ethical considerations. So this is a pretty simple framework, with some straightforward steps, which you can use. You can use abductive reasoning in the absence of complete information to generate new ideas. And you know, it's not magic, and it doesn't remove the need for creativity, but it gives you a way to focus it on the production of testable hypotheses. Final couple of thoughts on the limitations of hypothesis generation before I wrap up. We are, when we're generating hypotheses and doing abductive reasoning, we're under some pretty human constraints, a couple of which I've mentioned already. Your ideas are going to be constrained by the mental model that you bring to problem solving, particularly where more experienced people have more depth and more detail, but can be restricted by exactly that experience. And then inexperienced people don't have the same depth or detail, but they're not constrained in the same way. So we overcome this, and I can't stress it enough, through bringing people together, through collaboration, through diversity of experience, whether that's background or neurodiversity. Confirmation bias is also problematic. It's really common when searching for and interpreting information for people to gravitate unconsciously towards the data that confirms their beliefs. And it's a problem in particular here because abductive reasoning is dealing with surprising observations. So again, diversity helps, but you have to build that skill for curiosity, for questioning your beliefs. That'll help you work through confirmation bias. And finally, then, cognitive load, a person's ability to actually generate the insight needed in the face of the vast volumes of structured and unstructured data that's available to analyze and synthesize and connect the dots. The challenge here is a very human limitation, but I think AI tools that are synthesizing and summarizing are helping to overcome that, and they're democratizing and leveling this playing field of observation and insight. I think actual hypothesis generation is still, for now at least, in the hands of the humans, but the curiosity to explore why is very human. But increasingly, I think it's supported by AI. So hypothesis generation based on abductive reasoning does have limitations, but we have some strategies for overcoming them. So that has been a whistle-stop tour of how I think about abductive reasoning, how it helps with product-centric thinking and with innovation. Successful product managers understand that abductive reasoning is not often applied outside of really great product management. So take this stuff, apply it yourself, but help the organizations that you work with embrace it as well. Leave me some feedback via the Menti. I'd love to hear what you thought. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Back to you, Darina.
Thank you, Bar. Thank you so much. Perfect. It was a great presentation. Thank you so much. And also, I want to remind our listeners that we will upload this recording to the YouTube the nearest time, so you will have a ability to rewatch it, re-listen, because I see that audience grows through time and change through time. So yeah, I think it's very important for us. Okay, we still don't have any questions, but I think it's not bad. It's evening for a lot of people. So, Barry, if it's possible to reach you in LinkedIn to ask any questions,
Of
good.
course, absolutely. Or send me questions on the Menti, or just ping me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. I will share the Menti password in YouTube as well.
Thank you.
Good. We can move on to the next speaker today, Antonio Di Marzo.
Hello. Let me share my screen.
Hello. Yeah, mic is yours. Good luck.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who decided to stay this long. I found what Barry has just said as extremely interesting because it gives a perspective of one of the key strategies that needs to be adopted, pursued, when we are operating at the edge of our role, really at the forefront of the known perimeter. And what I found interesting is that in many aspects of what Barry said, there are two dimensions. And one dimension is about a framework to apply, which is pretty much like having a compass and being able to read this very minimal but relevant signal that sets where the north is and follow a path. But then navigating through the reality of that, it's slightly different. And so as a product manager, as a product owner, as a business analyst, there are two sets of skills that are necessary to be able to excel in the role we play for our own startup, for our own company, or even in our own projects. And it's true that it's important to know about the how and what needs to be done, but there are some elements which are not that defined, which are called soft skills that play an important role. And the softer, they are the hardest, aren't they? Let's think about. So my name is Antonio, as I said. I'm Italian, of course. You can read that through the name, right? I guess that's the only thing that clearly speaks that I'm Italian, and you will notice my hand everywhere. I'm an electronic engineer, so dedicating my time to developing my hard skills for many years, literally studying, and absorbing knowledge, and worked as an electronic embedded engineer for many years, since when I decided to join a project-driven organization, a financial institutions, to do product management. I had long hair at that time, and when I finished that experience, it is pretty much like today. And you can imagine what is the life of a product manager or someone who has product mindset to live in a project-driven organization. After that, I joined a startup as a product manager, finding some oxygen finally, and grew in that environment, following the hype behind blockchain startups. I ended up leading the whole product organization. There were more than 20 people in the team since 2022, where I joined EPAM to lead the product management practice and consulting services within EMEA. I work basically on a daily basis with Barry, and we together help our own customers to achieve the balance between building the right product in the right way and in the most efficient way, so have it fast. But in order to get there, we have to balance skills. So now I'd like to hear from you, looking at your feedbacks. What do you think are the right ingredients to make a great product manager? What is required? Please join me in Menti, and I'll be happy to see your inputs there. Let's see if you can share some of your insights. And while you are providing some of your inputs, let's think about what are some of those ingredients, right? Because in Barry's presentation, thinking about abductive thinking, there are elements that we have seen there that talk about a specific, and let me go back, maybe I need to, because I need to share again the Menti link. There are elements that clearly speak about hard skills, right? And you need to know the framework. So please join me in this. Oh, wait a second, I'll be back here. I don't know why the presentation is not coming back again. Just a second. And share your feedback here. Thank you. So there are multiple types of skills, of course, that make a great product manager. And we are, in most of the cases, coming from a type of education which is pretty similar to mine. We are coming out from the university. And what we are taught through that process is absorbing and developing our own technical abilities through the means of reading, seeing, doing, thinking. And so if we look at that left side of our perspective, of our brain, we as product manager are eager to know more about frameworks, strategies, processes, accelerators. Okay, and we tend to be eager to be certified. We want to be certified. We want to learn more about a specific topic. We want to learn how to really apply OKRs. And there are thousands of books about OKRs today. But I invite you, please, search. There is a specific presentation from Andy Grove back in 1970. And he was introducing the OKRs with 5 bullet points. That's it. First time the OKRs were introduced in Intel, 5 bullet points. Now, tons of books. And so because of our educated brain to absorb information in this way by reading, seeing, doing, and thinking, we tend to invest a lot into absorbing knowledge and thinking that the way to be excellent, an excellent product manager, and the way to excel is by knowing more. But there is another aspect to that, especially when you think about what Barry said about abductive reasoning, is that there are unknowns, and you need to endeavor. You need to go above and beyond what is actually considered to be the perimeter of comfort or known. And so, what are the skills there? What do we need to do as product managers to really go above and beyond? And this is something that totally relates to my experience as a product manager, because in many cases, I found myself in endeavors and in situations where I knew the solution, I knew the framework, I knew the theory, but I realized that I was not excelling in my job. And then compared to other people, I found out, well, they knew less than me, but they were much more effective. So what have they done different from me? And I always struggled to understand what was the difference. And I was constantly going back to the previous. Let's try to learn a new framework. Let's get a new certification. I want to ensure that I know everything about how to execute product management tasks. But then I was always missing the point constantly. And this brings back to the point. Where do we focus our development? It's very easy to focus our development on the hard skills, because it's all about reading. It's all about processing external information, memorizing such information, and then practicing it a little bit, doing, to ensure that through the process of memorization, we are persisting this information in our brain and we can reuse it. But this is always a backward-looking process. And by totally dedicating ourselves to that process, we are fundamentally doing this. We're flattening our capabilities. Everything becomes influenced by the rational part of our thinking. And so we lose the ability to look on the other side and to understand how we can endeavor the unknown unknowns and how we can get beyond what we know. Because that's the main difference from successful product management and potentially just a little bit of backlog management, where you're just managing the known part. But succeeding in product management in most of the cases means doing something that nobody thought about. And it's a compounded process. So this is not something that happens one time and then it's done. It's a process where you are adding 1% every day, which may seem to be minimal. You can discard it. It's just meaningless. But compounding that by being a 1% every single day after 100 days makes a huge difference. But it's challenging because it's such a difficult process to nurture our soft skills and to complement our way of thinking and our approach, that, again, we go back to this picture. We go back to apply frameworks, to use our tools. But then when I find myself in this situation, I look back at the 90s and tools like OKRs, RACI, SWOT, business models, canvases, all those things. I think about a tool shop back in the 90s when I was going with my father to buy some tools he needed to do some workmanship. And it was a small shop. You just go there, you bring your problem, and the guy behind, the shop owner brought you the tool you needed. That's it. Today, you go to the Walmart, and then you have billions of different types of screwdrivers, and you never know what you're going to, if the one you're actually taking is the right or not. And I find it extremely challenging to really understand which tool, which process, which approach, I'm lost. Sometimes I'm totally lost. And mastering the capability of decoding that ocean, it requires, in my opinion, something different. And how can we move beyond that and recolor our skills? How can we rebalance ourselves? Getting back to this, a flat, white, well, black and white picture, a bit of sepia though. We're talking about knowledge. We're talking about art skills. We're talking about subject matter expertise. We're talking about following recipes, following a procedure. With the advent of general artificial intelligence, generative AI, and large language models, this is becoming much less relevant, much more of a utility. Everybody can access any framework at any time and seek for guidance on how to be executed. So to preserve our diversity and our differentiator and to preserve our excellence, and I hope for you guys the same, our continuous willingness to improve ourselves. How can we move from that to this? How can we recolor our skills? Well, that's the role of soft skills. And now, if processes and procedure, if the hard skills that we said before, knowing them by being so knowledgeable about them, it's going to bring to you efficiency and effectiveness. What does it bring when you master soft skills? And what are we talking about? So there are multiple elements here, and there are lots of relationship with what Barry said as well. We're talking about mastering emotional intelligence and mastering creativity. And those are things that you cannot learn just by reading or doing or thinking. Here, there is a strong aspect of feeling and experiencing. We're totally switching the perspective and looking at empathy. So understanding ourselves in relation to others and the opposite. Mastering curiosity, which means a lot. And the way we approach new things rather than stay away from something different. Listening to others with the purpose of feeling and then hearing what they're saying, not with the purpose of I listen to you and then I answer to you. Typically what we do as an educated human, as a generative AI, we answer to questions. We are a big large language model, potentially we can say at the extreme. And being able to communicate to others to inspire and empower, that's another element. As product managers, you have to motivate, change in some cases. You have to what so-called lead. But humans are changing. You cannot push any more people in doing things just by ordering something, or by pushing, or by stimulating, or by mandating. And that process doesn't work anymore. Because when you mandate, you end up achieving just what you asked. And sometimes you need more. You need endeavors. You need people to be brave and take risks and fail. And being able to and courage and brave to share the failure and to speak about the failure in order that everybody learns. And he learns as well. But in most of the cases, we fear about failures. We try to hide them or to preserve them and to protect them. And in all these aspects is to preserve our resiliency. But what is the key outcome? This is something I also, in my process of, and it's still, I think I've done 10% of what I need to do in order to get above and beyond the pure art skill driven product manager. I haven't yet figured it out what really is the outcome. What do you achieve once you enter into that, you master your capabilities. And the other challenge I have personally is there is no path, there is no rule book. There is no course. Yes, there are, of course, you can read lots of books, but then I found it fairly awkward. Can I read a book, the art skill fashion, to learn about soft skills? And I started experimenting a bit here. So I went into this kind of abductive reasoning and thinking, okay, the assumption here is nurturing soft skills through the means of tools and books. Yeah, it may work, but the reality is there must be something else. I need to expose myself, and I need to enter into a path where I notice that I'm learning, so that I can capitalize and create this type of compounding effect on my learning. And it's hard. The biggest comparison I can make to that, it's a never-ending journey. And enhancing your soft skills, the way I see it, is that by the time you are on base camp 7, you think that the Everest peak is just in front of you. You find out, well, there are another 20 base camps in order to get there. And once you're there, you will find there are more. It's a never-ending journey because it's totally related to your situation, your condition, and it's a continuous cycle. And every interaction you have, this is the most important thing that I've noticed. Every challenge, every feedback, it's a growth opportunity. Feedback, that's the most important element. It's as part of my engineering career, there is an element in the study of systems that I constantly face, which is the feedback loops. This positive feedback loop, the negative feedback loop that can potentially impact in the output of a system to be exponentially unstable, or achieving stability through the means of proportional, integral, derivative variation. And in this process of learning, there is an aspect, though, that while you're herding an hard skill, nurturing your knowledge, you're just adding more layers. You're adding more pages to your book, and then you access your information, and then you use it. Pick one page, execute, job done. But when I face that, I reflect on something and I realized, oh wow, I learned something today. Well, that is the moment I'm exiting for a strong emotional time. So when I go, and what I face in that perspective is absolutely change of myself, and change is it's not easy. You're changing. So the point here is, left side, you read, you absorb. It's entertainment. It's external focused. Soft skills, it's all about understanding how you are adapting, how you're changing, how you are reacting to things. And the process of learning, it implies changing yourself. And we are like rocks, of course. Change, it's actually quite hard to happen. So either you decide to be in control of this process a little bit, because we can't be in control in many cases. We can only control a little part, or even nothing, maybe. Maybe I will be able to tell this to you in future. But the point is, embrace the change and ask for feedback. And here, another element that I learned about developing our soft skills is it happens through feedback. And feedback is, ask an honest feedback to a colleague, to a friend. In EPAM, we have beautiful feedback platforms. We can ask feedback to everyone. Yes, but everybody is fairly afraid of giving you slightly negative feedback, because nobody wants to then receive a negative feedback afterwards. So you never write down, you should be improving here and there. You always try to be cautious on that. So how can we get a real feedback? Asking, how did I make you feel? What do you think about my behavior? Did I value what you said? Understanding what are the impact we make on other people to potentially fine-tune our approach and mitigate the risk of potentially causing challenges, or maximizing the potential of doing something positive and empowering, inspiring other events to occur afterwards and other people to take action. And so it's much better to potentially go for a walk, invite someone for a coffee, or maybe a beer or a glass of wine, not too much. Otherwise, the feedbacks may be too much to process in a single moment, but that's the point. Ask for feedback, honest feedback about how someone else felt, in relation to how you have related to them and what you have done with them. It's really about a feelings feedback. The other element is, as product managers, we need to inspire, we need to empower. And so being able to communicate in an effective way is extremely important. And today you can see I failed during this presentation in a couple of times. Yes, I haven't rehearsed enough. And rehearsing means literally spending time in front of the mirror or listening at your own voice, recording and understanding. Words have a specific weight. The sound you make while you're expressing them have a massive weight. I always, I have two kids, and I always, they are 6 and 2 years old. And in the first years of their life, it seems that they do understand you, even though they cannot really decode the language. So it means that we as humans, we are capable of processing the sound and extrapolating the semantic of the message without being able to understand what is really the content. There is a capability there. Then, in my opinion, something happens afterwards. We became biased and we only listen to the words rather than decoding the whole message. Take into consideration that we have billions of neurons in our brain, hundreds of millions of neurons in our gut, and thousands in our heart. So it means, of course, we have a kind of a big light in our brain that will enlighten everything else, but there is a small spark in the heart and quite a relevant one in the gut that maybe when we're kids, we're capable of decoding and understanding more. And rehearsing means giving, refining, polishing the way we communicate. And as product managers, I imagine, I was thinking in the past how effective was a specific spring planning session or a specific discovery workshop, and comparing myself, how I was communicating, how frequently I was pausing and letting people think, which I haven't done today, as you can see. So a lot of lessons learned for me, lessons to learn. And the other point is record yourself and replay and listen to yourself. I hate it. I hate myself all the time. When I listen to myself, I always say, oh gosh, how bad can I be? And on one side, I would be extremely a bit demotivated on myself, but on the other point, by processing those elements, I stop and reflect. And those things, I just, I'm journaling, I'm taking my notes. I'm an hand writer. I write things by hand. I cannot type on a keyboard. And then sometimes I stop and I reflect on what I have done. Was it good? Was it bad? And how I can progress. So how can this be so impactful on product management? Well, as I said before, and if you can give me your feedback here, I would really appreciate. What's, in your opinion, the outcome that you achieve, the end result of mastering soft skills in product management? If by mastering hard skills, what you get is efficiency and effectiveness, is the speed you can achieve your result, and it's the quality of the output. You the risk of making mistakes fundamentally because you're applying something. When you apply those skills, when you complement your knowledge with those soft dimensions, what is the end outcome? I don't have an answer to that. I'm still figuring out what you get out of it. Sometimes I feel when I saw charismatic people being able to execute successfully their product strategy, and I feel, well, it's success. But then I've seen loads of people being absolutely no charismatic at all, and being cold-hearted and totally focused on the hard skills and being successful as well. So assumption was killed. That doesn't work. The only thing I persuaded myself, and it seems to be still valid, but I would be happy to hear your voice and to see what you have. What do you think it could be an outcome? The only thing I see is potentially you achieve sustainable growth. Because by reflecting on yourself, you are safeguarding from be away from burnout. And mental health is extremely important. And when, as a product manager, you have to endeavor new projects, you're fundamentally boring a new tunnel into a big mountain, and nobody did it before you. So you are surfacing new dots before connecting them. And then you have to convince other people that what you see is valid. So you have to fight a lot for your feelings and perspectives and ideas. But being conscious and mindful about your soft skills, well, you end up failing many times without breaking yourself. And then you end up growing yourself and potentially the product, because you end up empowering more your people and they will be capable of contributing to the growth. That's the only thing I was able to come out with that. So I hope today, with this brief story, I have briefly inspired you, or at least I made you think. But please, if it was boring, give me a feedback and tell me the last part of the, let me know. We can connect in LinkedIn, so you can get in touch with me, or you can search me through Teams in EPAM, and we can be in touch and discuss. I'd be happy to share my experience and my failures and some small successes I had here and there. With that, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the community to having had me today.
Thank you very much, Antonio. It was great. So I've already scanned your scan, and it's your LinkedIn. So yeah, I will reach you. And we have a question from the audience. I've posted it in our chat in StreamYard, but I can read it for you. So, how do you think all these people relationships will be affected by a constant usage of AI tools? And when are trying to optimize and make every conversation shorter and not effective?
Oh, I can answer for sure the second one. I'm struggling to make conversation short, as you can see. um, so let me think. How do I think all of these people's relationship will be affected by constant usage of AI tools? Wow. I don't know. The way I see AI is a tool, right? It's an acceleration, and it's an accelerator, and it will support being more effective and efficient. But I hope, and it's a pure hope, it will not affect how we are pursuing a relationship, though. It will be awkward, but it's very difficult to predict at the moment for what we see, because at the moment it's just a tool that is there, and it answers if you ask. It is not whispering in your ear, and it's not trying to influence you subtly, in a kind of a sneaky fashion. It may be awkward, to be honest, if it becomes such influential that can anticipate things to happen and potentially um, take over some of the aspect. But still, can they? I'm not sure they can still feel. That's but instead of saying I'm sure they cannot, I have a doubt. Then, when we're trying to automate and make every conversation shorter and non-effective, that's another aspect. Please don't do that. Don't automate things. There is when I spent 3 years in London, and I remember in that time, and maybe Barry, if you can expand on that, I'm sure you're there. What I learned from the British people is that they really love to sit down, have a tea, and have a conversation. And having a conversation, literally flying around things and sharing reciprocal perspective in a very respectful fashion, it really enriches people. And in my opinion, some of the most emotional intelligent people are from the UK, because they're educated from where they are extremely young, to have this type of conversation. And I'm impressed about their capability really to have that. So I hope we keep investing in having a pleasant conversation between people. And that's also a fundamental element of change management. The main way to activate change management, there are lots of practices and framework, but the reality is very simple. You have to talk to people. And you may hear, communication is everything, transparency is everything. Whenever you're changing a big company, like, doing EPAM transformation, those things that we hear as part of EPAM, it's a lot about communication. But the way I would say it works much better if those communication can become conversations, because only through the means of conversation you end up really touching the inner part. And so taking it into consideration in your endeavors, if you are a BA, if you are a product owner, if you are a product manager, if you find challenging situations, don't stay away from that. Try to have a conversation. It will be initially difficult. People may potentially refrain from talking to you or being a little bit resistant, but try again and they will come. So never go back, never go away from a potential conversation. And if you need to have a conversation randomly, just ping me on LinkedIn, we can, or on Teams. I will be available.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Antonio. I'm happy that we had a chance to have this small conversations, and we also can get Paru back to the studio with us, just to have a small talk before the ending. So, Paru, maybe you have thoughts about a previous question.
It's a really good question, and I don't know. I think that what I've observed in the conversations, and they are conversations that I have with ChatGPT, and maybe, I don't know, Antonio, if this is maybe an artifact of the thing that you were mentioning about British people, but I'm super polite to ChatGPT. I say good morning, I say thank you very much, and I don't know how typical I am, actually, but it feels like a conversation to me, in the same way that that I have a conversation with anybody, but it is very directed towards an answer. And I think what Antonio was saying about listening in particular, listening to understand as opposed to listening to answer, is such a crucial part of the job that we all do, because understanding is at the core of helping and building stuff, right? And I think that's a real difference between, at least so far, what a human being does and how an AI interprets the words that you use, because it is working from a position of limited information. It's only got the text that you share. I think, when we get to a place where an AI is accurately interpreting your body language and has all the context, and is listening for understanding, that'll be a very different world. But I think there's an opportunity to develop those conversations that you make, that you have with AI, to be as effective as the conversations that you have with humans. I'm quite optimistic, and I think that rather than um, rather than reducing our ability, it'll give us an expanded capability. I don't know whether that will be right, but I have a lot of doubt as well.
Thank you so much, Barry. It's really big impact for us to have you here today and to have this great conversation. So, yeah, thank you for covering all of these topics. And I hope we will see you next time, maybe. Think about
Thanks.
next event. Yeah. This is all from us today. Thank you to your audience for being with us for this hour. I want to remind you that you are on a global business analyst community channel, so please subscribe if you don't want to miss any other great events. And please look for our updates. See you next time.
Thank you very much.